Welcome to the Leather Lounge, a weekly show recorded live every Tuesday where we explore the latest innovations in the Bitcoin ecosystem. From DeFi and dApps to digital art, we bring you in-depth conversations with developers, artists, and community leaders who are shaping the future. Whether you're here to learn about cutting-edge projects or to deepen your understanding of blockchain basics and decentralization, Leather is your go-to source for all things Bitcoin. Content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and do not reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, or company. We encourage you to conduct your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making any financial decisions. All right, well, hello and welcome back to the Leather Lounge. I'm your host, Sean Longstreet, and today we're hosting the Stacks DeFi Show after party because today the SBTC cap has been lifted, increasing the cap from 1,000 BTC up to 3,000 BTC, and we've invited many of the most prominent and leading prominent builders and leaders in the Bitcoin and Stacks ecosystems to join us on the show today. And we've extended to 90 minutes so that we can more deeply explore the significance of SBTC and highlight some of the grassroots efforts behind the Stacks marketing working group as well. So I'll briefly introduce all the guests that we've lined up for you today. And first, we're going to be talking to Andre Serrano, head of product for Bitcoin L2 Labs. We're talking with Mark Hendrickson, GM for Leather Wallet. Tycho, who leads Zest, a Bitcoin lending protocol. Diego from Bitflow, where you can swap and join liquidity pools. Jakob from Hermetica, where you can mint USDH, a yield-bearing stable dollar. And we'll close things out with Grant, who is leading the Grassroots Stacks Marketing Working Group. So it's a huge show today, everyone. So big day for Stacks and Bitcoin, expanding Bitcoin. As Munib says, let the Bitcoins must flow. So here we are today. And did we get Andre back in the room? Is he with us? Not yet, huh? Andre's having some connectivity issues. Let's get him on again. But we've got Tycho here as well. So Tycho, let's start with you.
Yeah.
I was fascinated in doing a little bit of research today. I read that you have an interesting background because you also got you have a BA in history from University of Oxford, and you've spent a lot of time thinking about like financial history from, the Renaissance up to our current age with crypto. You were a Forbes 30 under 30, which is, I think you're at least the second guest that we've had on the show that's a Forbes 30 under 30. So I'll tease that little intro right there, and you can tell us anything more about yourself and Zest.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate it, and thanks for the kind introduction. And so I'm Tycho, and I guess you sort of my sort of CV is out there right now. But I guess my sort of journey into crypto, well, in hindsight, maybe started a bit at university in some way. But yeah, I studied history, which is maybe a bit different from what many people did who are in the space, right? And not computer science or sort of a related field, but. And while studying history, I was just very interested always in financial flows and how that shapes the course of history, which is very often not the narrative that's told, right? The narrative that's in most history books is sort of about great men doing great things and sort of they just sort of make stuff happen, but there's a lot of context setting kind of going around, which has to do with finance, right? And coming from the Netherlands, I think it's always one of the very interesting stories how the very small Dutch Republic managed to beat the great Spanish Empire, which was kind of covering half the world at that time, right? Latin America and half of Europe through financial engineering primarily, right? And through the ability to borrow at much lower rates than the Spanish king, because the Spanish king would sometimes just say, "Well, I'm not repaying you because I'm the king of Spain," right? And then the small merchant in the Netherlands managed to mobilize all this capital and basically get their independence and yeah, that sort of is a very, interesting context in which we now also see, in our world, everything change, right? The whole monetary paradigm is sort of changing, once again. It's like a continuation of like dethroning the kings or those institutions and going to a new world. So those are the kind of parallels I see, and that's a very exciting thing to be at the forefront of, right? And when it comes to crypto, obviously Bitcoin is at the forefront. Like that's what we see this cycle, and then you want to be building on Bitcoin, right? And building on Bitcoin, that's where Stacks is at the forefront, right? With something like SBTC. So today is a very, very important day, and yeah, it's very exciting to be here and to work on to work on something that I'm sure we'll find in the history books one day.
Tell us about Zest and stacking DAO then, and connect that to Bitcoin's utility.
Yeah, absolutely. So to understand what Zest and Stacking DAO do, maybe it's helpful to understand the context of Stacks, right? So Stacks is a Bitcoin layer two, and it has kind of two interesting features, right? One is that it has separate consensus, right? So it produces blocks faster, right, than Bitcoin, but after every Bitcoin block, state is anchored to Bitcoin. And that's where stacking now plays a big role, right? And the consensus on stacks. And then Zest protocol is a lending protocol similar to Aave on Ethereum, where people can borrow against assets, right? And then primarily SBTC, which is like the unique feature of stacks. So yeah, just to give a quick rundown, right? So Zest protocol is a lending market, right? You move your BTC onto stacks at SBTC, and then deposit it onto Zest protocol to earn additional yield, or to borrow against it, right? So to borrow stable coins or other assets against your SBTC. And Stacking DAO, which I'm also a contributor to and helped start, is a protocol focused on the consensus of stacks, right? It's where you can stake STX, or stack STX, right, as it's called, to get a liquid token, like a tokenized representation of that, similar to like Lido on Ethereum with STETH. You get ST stacks or ST stacks BTC. There's two options, either if you want STX yield or yield in SBTC. But yeah, you can basically deposit your STX on Stacking DAO and earn, the 8-9% stacks consensus yield that's out there. And then once you have your liquid representation of that, you can go to Zest protocol as well and put it there, earn more yields, borrow against it, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, Zest protocol and stacking now form a very important part of stacks, and kind of making the unique features of the separate consensus and SBTC really come to life.
Beautiful. All right, well, Andre is here now. We're going to cross our fingers and hope that his Wi-Fi is strong enough, because Andre can give us a really great background onto SBTC. He's been one of the leaders and architects behind SBTC. So Andre, I gave you a little intro at the top that you are leading and a leading product at Bitcoin L2 Labs. But could you tell us a little bit more about what this moment means to you personally, and maybe give us some insights into the background, what it's been like to build out and then release SBTC?
Absolutely. First of all, hi everyone. Sorry for the delay here. I'm here in Bitcoin Denver, and apparently the Wi-Fi isn't that strong out here yet. So, but we're back. Really excited for today. It's a big moment for the Stacks ecosystem and Bitcoin broadly. It is the next cap increase for SBTC. The total capacity of SBTC from 1,000 Bitcoin up to now 3,000 Bitcoin. And the first cap filled fairly quickly towards the middle of December. And we're looking at this moment to really see more Bitcoin moving into DeFi and smart contracts. I think, to take a step back, the vision here is really to make Bitcoin a productive asset. And so, moving beyond just sitting in cold storage, not really being put to productive use. And so we really want to see more Bitcoin being deployed in DeFi protocols, being able to earn yields or borrow against it, and really unlock a wide range of use cases for ultimately the Bitcoin economy. And so a lot of work has gone into this moment, and this is just the beginning. I think that excited to get more into it today.
What has the feedback been so far while you had the 1,000 unlock? And how do you approach, finding that the right balance of pegging up to 3,000 now?
Yeah, I think the feedback has been great because the way that the SBTC protocol was designed, especially for this the rewards program that we've developed, people have the opportunity to earn Bitcoin. And specifically, I think the way that this was designed was well received because it meant that users and investors, all they had to do was hold Bitcoin or deployed into DeFi apps on stacks, and they would have the ability to earn Bitcoin. It's what we call Bitcoin in, Bitcoin out. It's a really simple process. And so I think that was well received. And as I mentioned, the first cap closed within, I believe, about 48 hours. So there's clearly a lot of demand for people to move their Bitcoin into these sorts of productive use cases. I think something around 45% of it actually was deployed into Zest protocols, and we have Tycho here today. And I think really the focus is on how do we activate 100% of it, and what are the types of use cases that people want to do with their Bitcoin that would actually have them move it out of cold storage and deploying it. So that's what we're focused on here today.
Yep, that's all right. Making Bitcoin more functional. Well, let me throw it over to Diego also. So one of the platforms that we're talking about with utility, Diego is here from BitFlow. Welcome to the Leather Lounge, Diego. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Love it. Well, I think this is an exciting time. As people say, this is Stacks babies. So I am adopting this SBTC baby as well for the past 3 years. It's good to see growing. It's been a long journey, but this is just the beginning. And as a DEX, we're a BitFlow. We're building essential DeFi infrastructure around the best form of money, which is Bitcoin. And SBTC unlocks a lot of great things that before were not possible. And we're doing our best to deliver a decentralized exchange, an aggregator, and a suite of tools that allows people to earn and trade Bitcoin, deep liquidity pools, Rune's automated market maker, who just deployed the DCA function as well, which is dollar costing average, limit orders coming. But ideally, we want people to trade and earn on Bitcoin and Bitcoin layers, and scaling Bitcoin through SBTC is a big unlock for not only BitFlow, but everyone on the ecosystem.
Okay, good. Let me throw it. So I want to get to Jakob for the intro and then hear from Mark and then kind of get out of the way and let you guys talk to each other. So Jakob, thank you for joining us here from Hermetica. You're a repeat offender here on the show. So I know listeners have been pretty wowed and impressed with some of your perspective on Bitcoin adoption, your perspective on the transition, the long transition to Bitcoin, the value of the US dollar. So maybe that's a good way to set the stage so you can tell us about USDH. I can't hear Jakob.
Yeah, me either.
Switch on my mic.
There we go.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah, good to see you all. Nice to see you, Sean. And yeah, thanks for the introduction. We have talked a lot about the dollar and Bitcoin and how they interrelate. And obviously, we're all fans of Bitcoin and see the Bitcoin standard as the long-term future of where we're going as a financial system and monetary system. But we live in a reality today where the dollar is the reserve currency and actually is being adopted even stronger than any other currency. The acceleration of the adoption of the dollar is very strong. It's especially being adopted outside of the US. And so, and it's being adopted very strongly actually in DeFi. I think 99.6% of stablecoins in DeFi are dollar denominated stablecoins. And so what we at Hermetica see as an important element for Bitcoin DeFi, Stacks DeFi, and just in general, the new financial system built on Bitcoin is a dollar asset. And in our opinion, that dollar asset should be not tied to the legacy financial system, not tied to the fiat system, but tied to Bitcoin instead. And so that's what USDH is. That's what our stablecoin is. It is a fully Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. So behind the stablecoin, if you hold USDH, let's say like this, if you hold USDH, you're really still holding Bitcoin. You're holding $1 worth of Bitcoin. You basically freeze in not the Satoshi value, but the dollar value of your Bitcoin holdings. And then we deploy that into DeFi, into Zest, into Bitflow, actually great partners of ours. And because as we bring on more liquidity on the Bitcoin side, in order for us to actually have economic activity, like Bitcoin has to have a counterpart, something that it's trading against, and that is the dollar, and that's what we're bringing to the table. So you can actually do things like hedging with your BTC if you want to sidestep the market. Last 2 days was pretty brutal. We saw like a 15-20% decline. Looking at the chart here, if you want to sidestep that, you can just swap into USDH. You're still holding Bitcoin. You're still in like actually holding Bitcoin, the asset, but it doesn't have any exposure to price. And that allows a lot of trading and a lot of other activities like lending that obviously are super important for a Bitcoin economy. So yeah, that's Hermetica, that's USDH, and glad to see you, everybody. And obviously it's a big day for the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it definitely is. Mark, let me throw it to you now, because with all of these different platforms that we're featuring today, what you need is connectivity with a great user interface and a great wallet. So thank you for jumping on today to talk about Lether.
Yeah, great to be here. My Stacks journey now goes back many years. I've been working on Stacks since 2018, and I just want to echo the centrality of SBDC for everything that we're all doing, and especially on the Lether side, trying to deliver on a very consistent, consolidated user experience for newcomers, both newcomers and old timers to Stacks. I think when we launched Stacks 2.0 as a community back in 2021, I think everyone agreed that we needed faster block times and we needed to actually get BTC as an asset onto the network for it to really fulfill its mission. And so I think the fact that SBC launched at the end of last year, and now we're getting to the place where we can actually open it up and sort of let the Bitcoin flow onto the network more freely, it's just it's a super critical moment, I think, in the sense of just the overall multi-year arc of Stacks. I can't sort of I think emphasize enough just how critical this component is to everything we're doing. And I think for Lether, we're the original Stacks wallet, and we support assets on the L1 in addition to Stacks on the L2. We'll really view this whole question of how do users bring BTC over Stacks as SBDC and then deploy that SBDC in applications as the sort of key path for us to power. And so all of our attention as far as product design and marketing is really geared towards that question of a BTC holder coming in, getting it over to SBDC, and then deploying into apps and protocols. For the foreseeable future, to get yield, I think that's sort of the opportunity that everyone recognizes the most potent. But over time, we'll see as liquidity builds up on the Stack side, a lot more use cases for that capital. And so our product and marketing work is really around how do we educate the public and then deliver on consistent designs that make it really easy for folks to go through that journey. And of course, we power apps via our API, so folks can plug Lether into various apps like Zest, Bitflow, Hermetica, etc. But we also want to bring those protocols into Lether so that folks can use Lether and directly interact with those protocols without having to go elsewhere. And so, there's a lot of work being done on the protocol level for SBDC in particular, but on the user interface level for Lether, I think that's just as equally important for us to get right.
Right, and as you mentioned already, natively, you have swaps in the Lether app. You can just do that natively where you don't have to go to the platform, but I believe that is powered by Bitflow. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So that's a great example of us at Lether leveraging technology built by others to provide a much more seamless experience for our users and the Stacks community at large. So we're not looking at Leather to rebuild all these protocols or all this, decentralized infrastructure. Essentially, we really want to provide an interface, like the best-in-class interface for accessing those protocols, without having to understand all the bells and whistles that are involved.
Yeah. Well, we have three amazing platforms with us on the show today, being Hermetica and Bitflow and Zest. But Andre, let me throw this question to you to talk more broadly about the use cases with SBTC, maybe the strategy behind adoption, and any kind of like roadmaps on your mind.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I mean, I think to start out, I kind of want to build on a couple of things that Jakob and Mark were talking about here, which is that, when I see like the on a longer term time horizon, I do believe we are going towards hyper Bitcoinization, with Bitcoin being kind of the unit of account, medium of exchange that'll kind of be at the base layer of this global financial system. But we're in this intermediate point now where near term we are still using the dollar as the reserve asset and to basically pay for our day-to-day expenses. And so near term, what can we do to help people transition to a Bitcoin standard? I think a key part of that is helping them to live on their BTC. And what do I mean by that? But if you can borrow against your Bitcoin to access dollars, that's a really great way to basically get leverage, and you could use that to, say, fund your day-to-day expenses. You could go out and buy a house with that. I think I speak with a lot of investors, and buying real estate with your with like using Bitcoin, borrowing against your Bitcoin to buy real estate, very popular use case. Similarly, with Hermetica and what Jakob is building, borrowing against your BTC to access stablecoins that you either want to transact with on chain, or you want to use that to go leverage long or access some yields through like their yield bearing system by staking USDH. I think these are all really great initial use cases to kind of power basically that transition to Bitcoin being this foundation of all of these applications. So I think that's important. And then, just building on what Mark said, because I think it's really important, because really like the wallets like Leather are in this really critical position to help to improve the user experience of actually helping people to transact on chain, right? And so, I love that he talked about, what are sorts of the user experiences and the toolings that we can provide there. And so, today when you go to use SBTC, you can bridge directly in the Leather wallet. You can interact with swaps and some of the other applications there. And so, it's something that we spend a lot of time talking about. I know Diego talks about it a lot too, but how can we just improve the user experience? I think historically, Bitcoin has been known for having a clunky user experience. That's kind of been a barrier for broader adoption. And so it's one of the coolest things, I think, when we think about moving Bitcoin into SBTC and getting access to all of the tools that we built in the Stacks ecosystem, all of the applications and libraries to basically make that as frictionless as possible. That's really what I'm excited about. And I think that improvement in some of these use cases that we're talking about and some of the user experience is really what's going to enable this next phase of Bitcoin to come on chain and people really just start utilizing their Bitcoin in new and interesting ways.
Okay, so let me lay out the different ways and risk levels of Bitcoin utility, right? So obviously the safest thing is cold storage. And I know, Jakob, I want to talk with you about the latest hack and how kind of Hermetica protects themselves and their assets. So that's like the safest, right? It's all on your ledger or whatever your hardware device is, but it's not really doing anything. Next step, SBTC, where it's just sitting in your wallet gaining yield. So where does the yield come from? But then you have all these other like flavors of of yield strategy, and all of you have different approaches to that. So if we can just maybe go around the room and talk about the different strategies for yield bearing, and where are they like on the risk curve and on the rewards, the risk rewards curve. Maybe we can start with like, native, just SBTC sitting in the wallet, gaining, what is that, roughly 5%?
Yeah, so I guess is that for me? I can take it for that for SBDC. So I think when you look at the different levels of risk, I think it's a great question because in general, users should be aware of the types of risk that they're taking when they're using these sorts of systems. SBDC sitting in the wallet, you can think of that as like the least risky thing you can do with your Bitcoin right now. We've developed basically a yield program initially where users have the ability to earn rewards on their BTC just for holding SBTC. It's part of a incentive to bootstrap the network. So SBDC is secured by a set of institutional signers. It is there's currently 14 signers that are securing the protocol, so it's a 70% threshold to move Bitcoin in and out of the protocol. And these signers have been elected from the Stacks community based on their for meeting a certain set of criteria that includes institutional grade infrastructure setups, reliability, communication, things like that. And so so from that perspective, SBDC is a more decentralized option than what we're seeing with other sort of wrapped assets, and really just being able to deposit Bitcoin into SBDC is probably the easiest and least risky thing that you can do with it. And maybe I'll turn it over to the folks on the call, and we can talk about the different use cases here and sort of what are the trade-offs with it.
Tycho, can I tag you in next?
Yeah, absolutely. So but SBTC is built for utility, right? That's the whole point. Right? You move your BTC from L1 to L2. You have SBTC now, and then you can go to applesprotocol.com and hit the big supply button, and then you can earn yield on your SBTC, right? And that includes the yield that is coming from the protocol, right? That Amber just talked about. And it also includes a sort of extra bonus on top, right? That comes out of Zest protocol. And that's basically roughly 7.3% right now. And actually, in the last hour since SBTC launched, already 63 BTC flew in. So that's about $5 million in the last hour. So it's very, very exciting to see all of that. And Zest protocol, is the application with about 40% of SBTC that's currently minted on it. And then users can either just leave it there to earn a yield, or they can borrow other assets if they want. So, but you could just put it there and earn the 7.3%.
Nice. Jakob, Diego, let me make sure you guys don't have any time constraints for the next 30 minutes. Are you both still free? Okay, brilliant. Well, I mean, either of you could go.
I have to head out, by the way,
okay.
at that hour, but I just wanted to flag
Perfect. That. Okay, thanks, Tycho. Well, let's Diego, let's talk about BitFlow and the different flavors of yield that you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I think as you guys know, DEX or especially DEX aggregator is essential to any ecosystem. And deploying liquidity in a decentralized exchange, of course, there's risk. There's smart contract risk. There's impermanent loss risk, but that is balanced by the incentives on the other side. So with BitFlow, you have a few options. So you can kind of choose your yield strategy, provide liquidity on those SBTC pools, and earn trading fees on top of the SBTC rewards, which is 5% or so. And you can also stake it for additional promotional rewards on top of that. And those yield strategies can vary from like a volume pool, which is like SBTC and Stacks, which is a high traffic premier pool with the most liquid tokens on Stacks, which is of course is SBTC and Stacks. That's about 22% APY. Then you have like stability pools, which are kind of like ST stacks or STX stacks, and SBTC or PBTC in different flavors of Bitcoin as well. Those are high stability pools, no permanent loss because you're dealing with Bitcoin to Bitcoin. Um, about 12% APY as of right now. And then you also have, runes pools, for example, which is high volatility, but also high beta, where you can earn up to 53% as of right now if you provide liquidity to SBTC and DOG. So giving users those options, I think it's essential, but it's also key to provide the liquidity for the other protocols, including the ones in this call, to allow users to trade and provide fewer price swings, low slippage, and balance that with the incentives to help power these pools.
Real quick, can you talk about, for anyone who is looking at some of these liquidity pools where the APY is really high, but the importance of thinking about impermanent loss, and explain briefly what that is?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to think about impermanent loss. You have, when you're dealing with different price assets, for example, SBTC and stacks, the variation between the price of those two assets can vary, and also the pool composition. So let's just say you're adding in $100 on both sides, and the pool is 50-50. It's perfectly balanced. And then based on the trading activity, the pools goes to 40-50. So when you remove liquidity, you have a chance of impermanent loss based on the value of those tokens. So let's say it's 60-40. Now Stacks is at $1.20, but Bitcoin is at 80,000 instead of 100. So you have that difference. And usually impermanent loss is measured by comparing, what if I held these assets? That's the first impermanent loss way to calculate. What if I just held on to these assets and not deploy them in the pool? What is my impermanent loss? And usually that's really in the low single digits. And then you also have high volatility pools, which are kind of like SBTC and DOG, and those vary a lot. Those can increase the risk of impermanent loss, but then you also have to calculate the trading fees on top and the staking rewards to see what your actually ratio is. But that is also used to rebalance pools. So when market makers or liquidity providers are looking at multiple pools across DEXs, they can use that ARB opportunity to actually gain and increase their APY on those pools. So if on Alex or Velar or even Arcadico and Biflo, we have the same pools, you can kind of use that pool composition to rebalance and gain those yields as well. So that's kind of like one of the first, I think one of the, besides smart contract risk, which is normal with every protocol, I think impermanent loss is definitely the second on that list.
Great, Diego. Thank you. Jakob, thank you for your patience. I'm going to throw it to you now because I would love to get your thoughts on, this is something that you talk a lot about. I hear you. And there's something, you guys all have so many things in common, but one of those things is consistency, because I see you guys in spaces all the time answering everyone's questions with such grace and patience and clarity. And Jakob, this is something I've heard you explain a lot, but I'm going to ask you again. Can you explain where the yield comes from on a stable dollar? How does USDH create some of these yields that are anywhere between 15-30%?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't get tired of answering it. So happy to. So how the Hermetica or the USDH protocol works is that we essentially couple a spot Bitcoin position with a short on the futures market. And that, what it does, it locks in the dollar value of Bitcoin, which then allows us to issue 100% of the value of that Bitcoin on chain as a stablecoin. So it's really part of the stablecoin protocol or design in that it allows us to be very capital efficient. As a cherry on top or a bonus, we actually generate yield from that short futures position. So we have USDH, which is a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. And then we have SUSDH, which is staked USDH. You can access it by staking USDH, which you can think of as a tokenized yield strategy. This is the basis trade or the carry trade. This is a trade that in institutional circles is probably one of the most used or executed trade in all of history to make yield. And SUSDH gives you access to that with a simple token. So we're essentially bringing that trade on chain and democratizing access to it. How is the yield generated? It's quite simple. So the futures market allow you to get leverage on Bitcoin, right? You can hold Bitcoin or any other asset and then buy futures contracts that gives you more exposure to Bitcoin. And since a lot of folks want to have exposure to Bitcoin, there is somebody that needs to sell them that exposure. There's somebody that needs to sell futures contracts to the people that want to be long futures contracts. And so in order to balance that supply and demand, there is a interest payment between people that want to be long to people that actually provide that long exposure. And that is called the funding rate in futures markets, paid out every 8 hours. And it is on average around 12% over the last 6 years. So there's significant data on it, but can vary with demand for leverage in the Bitcoin market. So in bull markets in 2023, we saw 25 or 26% on an annualized basis. That's where up to 25% comes from when you visit our website. And so we collect this funding rate because we're structurally short the futures markets to hedge out the exposure to Bitcoin to actually issue the stable coin in a very efficient way. We harvest the funding rate as a byproduct, and then we pass that on to people that stake the stable coin. So you can hold the stable coin, it's a Bitcoin backed stable coin, you can interact with Bitflow, you can supply it to Zest, you can borrow it on Zest, but then you can also come to our website and stake it, and then you get SUSDH, which is the token that represents the yield. And then if you hold USDH every day, you get a yield payment from us, from the funding rates. And that varies with the demand. Right now it's around 14%, but it can be very significant. And I hope that makes sense on how the yield comes to be.
Yeah, well explained. Let me transition to talk about security because Jakob, you recently had a really great tweet to talk about the Bybit situation. So can you talk a little bit about risk? And then maybe I'll open it up to anyone else who wants to talk about either firsthand experiences or how you think about risk, why these things tend to happen on non-Bitcoin chains more than on Bitcoin. But yeah, let me start with you, Jakob, so you can reference this tweet about Bybit.
Yeah, so last week we saw one, I think it was the biggest exchange hack in history, was $1.5 billion of Ethereum being drained out of a Bybit account. And why that is relevant to us at Hermetica is because since we need to access the futures markets and 95% of the futures open interest and volume today is on centralized exchanges, we need to interact with centralized exchanges. And so we actually have Bybit as a counterparty. We trade on Bybit. And so when the hack happened and the Ethereum flowed out and there was a big panic on Twitter, what was interesting for us is that we have designed our protocol in a way that these kind of exchange vulnerabilities have a very limited effect on the actual backing assets of USDH. I come from Kraken. I worked at Kraken for a while. 50% of our team is ex-Kraken. Some of the engineers are ex-Kraken. We understand how the sausage is made at centralized exchanges, and it's not necessarily super secure. I mean, it is secure in most cases, but there's a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of attack vectors that can bring an exchange down. And I think anybody that has been in crypto for a minute knows that exchanges are a huge honeypot and a vulnerability. So we designed Hermetica and USDH in a way that the counterparty risk to exchanges, even though we trade on them, is very minimal. And how we do this is that we basically use a custodian between us and the exchange. The custodian holds the coins and allows us to trade on the exchange with what is called an off-exchange settlement solution, where the coins are held on the exchange, on the custodian, and then become available on the exchange, but they're actually never on the balance sheet of the exchange. So they're never actually exposed to any bankruptcy claims or hacks from the exchange. They're still in the custodian. Like, so we can have our cake and eat it too. We can have coins in custody, but also have them as margin on the exchange to trade. So when this Bybit event happened, our coins were never at risk because they were sitting in the custodian. But what was at risk was any unrealized P&L. So if we go short, if the price goes down, there's a profit that is on the exchange on those futures positions. And that could be if the exchange goes bankrupt, which in Bybit's case obviously was a worry. I think that worry now has subsided because they have managed it very well and have a really strong balance sheet. But if those exchanges goes bankrupt, now that unrealized P&L we would be on the hook for. So what our system do in that instance actually is reduce any exposure to that exchange. So we basically just close those positions and open them on another exchange. And that is the other element that is very important for us. Futures contracts across all exchanges are fungible. If I trade on Bybit, on Binance, on OKX, on BitGet, those are the 4 exchanges that we trade on. One Bitcoin contract is one Bitcoin contract on any of those. So we were able to basically close our positions on Bybit and reopen them on another exchange in a matter of minutes. And then that way reduce completely all exposure to Bybit.
Wow.
So even though we're trading on Bybit, in a worst case scenario, I would say this is one of the worst case scenarios that can hit a protocol like us. We're able to mitigate the risk within minutes.
Amazing. Let me throw that question out to everyone else. How do you approach risk management personally on protocol level? Anyone else want to jump on that?
I would love to take it. I would love to take it. Yeah, I think maybe first of all, like what Jacob just said, like this is a really big change, right, from how things used to work. Like in the FTX days, this product, this kind of way of like holding the assets in a custodian while trading on a centralized exchange, it wasn't there, right? Now it is. So it shows how far, how far the industry has come, right? I remember the meeting with the sales guy of that product, right? Like Copper Clear Loop, I think the day of FTX or the day after in New York, and he was like, "Yeah, I think this is going to be our time," you know. And yeah, guess where we are now, which makes it very easy for also DeFi protocols, right, to sort of tap into that centralized exchange world much more securely. But yeah, I guess in terms of like, you know, security and stuff like that, I guess the gist of it is like don't leave your assets on a centralized exchange, right? That's basically what Jacob is saying. Yeah, and you can move them to other places, right? To on-chain where they're in your custody, which is theoretically safer, or at least you control whether you lose your keys or not, right? Which is still like a pretty substantial thing, but you can, you know, you at least are in charge of your own affairs, right? And well, yeah, that's, you know, one thing with where SPPC is also so great, right? Because a lot of BTC is sitting on exchanges today, right? I mean, with ETH, it's different, right? People kind of, you know, they buy their ETH, they go and do stuff, they go and stake it, they go like, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, with BTC, it's often sitting there somewhere. But, you know, now you can, and withdrawing BTC to a wallet is kind of like, you know, it's a hassle, and like all these Bitcoin wallets are not so great, and, you know, it's like takes a while and all that stuff. And yeah, SBTC is also like a, you know, a great solution for that. Once it's there, it allows for fast transfers, right? You can do things with it very quickly, while compromising very minimally, right, on the security of BTC. So yeah, I think you know, we've come very far, and yeah, we're about to go further, right? Because one thing that people also do with BTC a lot is collateralizing it, right? And in the FTX days, that's how most people lost the most money, right? Like the friends of mine who got wrecked the most had like a margin position open on FTX, and they couldn't get out in time, right? They saw it going down, but they were like, yeah, I can't close my loan right now. So yeah, that's also where, you know, CSS protocol comes in, right? As the lending market on Stacks and all the other DeFi protocols that are being built here.
Anything else to add on this topic? I want to throw it to Mark next. Mark, I wanted to ask you and get your take on your approach to building out the Leather app. You know, how do you balance, I guess, a fast-moving industry with a lot of flashy, shiny new trends and things, with building a great UX and you know, great experience? What's your approach on building Leather?
Yeah, good question. As I mentioned before, I've been working on Stacks for a long time, in crypto for now about 7 years. And I think I've learned, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, that chasing the microtrends is very dangerous. It's costly. And so I think I've grown towards a position of establishing very clear central principles and user experience goals, user journeys that you say, okay, these user journeys, these key ones, have to be really, really good, and nothing else really matters, just these, and just developing a focus on those. And if things pop up trends-wise that help with that, great. But if trends are tangential to those core flows and principles, it's frankly it's best to ignore them entirely. I can't say we've always done that. There's a lot of things we've done at Leather historically that have been more opportunistic. But I think I've learned that more often than not, when you jump on a bandwagon or some sort of hype that's going on, what you do is you're probably chasing it probably a little bit too late as well, right? Even if it's just a few days or a few weeks, and by the time you actually deliver against it, the chances are very high that the tide's gone out already on that trend, because these trends in crypto are so they arrive very quickly, but they also go away very quickly lots of times, and they do so in cycles. And so I think if you have a core thesis, right, core things you want to deliver, you yourself are going to experience cycles of this sort of market behavior. There's going to be more attention and more bull-like context, and then more bear-like. But if you commit yourself to just those core principles, you can build between them, and so that you basically accumulate expertise and you flesh out the experience for users across those cycles. And that to me is just so much more important than just trying to jump around each time. I think the discipline, of course, involves having a lot of belief and faith to some extent in those core principles and those core experiences, because the markets are not going to give you that validation 80% of the time as you're going through these cycles. And you have to just say no to a lot of things that a lot of people are beating your door to get you to build. I mean, as a wall provider, I think especially we're sort of in the middle of what a lot of people want to use and build. And so a lot of folks that are trying to build velocity use cases are kind of screaming at us in a good way to build things faster and serve their particular needs. And we just have to be, I think, choosy at the end of the day and really stick to what we care about most. And there's a lot of wallets in the world, and that's great. I think wallets need to differentiate and really figure out what they do best versus try to do a little bit of everything. I was just seeing something today about the peanut butter manifesto from Yahoo from years ago, and that resonated for me because I think a lot of times wallets, they try to spread their features too thin across lots of things. It creates a very diluted sort of experience and also marketing proposition. So that's a long way of saying that I think one of the key lessons I've learned from building in crypto is that focus is all the more necessary, given that in crypto, the standard or the default is not to have focus. People are very scatterbrained in this industry.
Wow. Okay. So that reminds me a little bit of what we've been seeing on Solana with a lot of the meme coin trading. People are starting to get frustrated. They're getting wrecked. They're getting front run. Do you all have any thoughts about the kind of the things that we see in the periphery in other crypto landscapes and other L1s and L2s? Maybe some of the degeneracy, some of that activity, and what you think that means for possibly like adoption and people coming to Bitcoin? Because there's, the common phrase like all roads lead to Bitcoin. Eventually, whatever your activity is, you're probably going to find a home here, right? So does anyone have anything to say about, some of this activity? Yeah, let me throw that out there to all of you.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think with every cycle, there's always going to be that that shiny rock that people look for. And when we started building Bitflow, was a couple months right before FTX crash, Terra Luna, and people were chasing at 3 or 4, even 5-digit APYs, right, which was pretty insane. The flipping of NFTs, it went from the fun part to a stressful part, stressful phase as well, where people were just trying to worry about money. There was no community being built on NFTs. And then Blur came. It became obvious that NFT was kind of dead by then because people were just trading for money. And I think that's what's happening now. It's a short cycle. There's a gap also between institutional investors and retail investors. And retails are not, let's call it, as successful as the previous cycle. Maybe it was the ICO summer, or maybe it was the NFT. You know, people made money, and now with this phase, it's a little bit shorter, faster as well, which we expect these cycles to be. And they're trying to find the next, the next pot of gold, and they end up, unfortunately losing a lot of money. Um, and we think it's an opportunity to educate people again. It's ongoing education about not only the benefits of decentralized finance, but also Bitcoin. And we do think all roads lead back to Bitcoin. And it's an opportunity for us to actually do our part and repeat the same message, and educate people about Bitcoin and what are the benefits of building a Bitcoin. We have been very isolated from these previous 3 or 4 cycles that existed. And I think now it's an opportunity to do things right. And we even see, even with runes as a token standard, how it differs from Solana or other meme coins and other chains. We have Dog, which is, reach $1 billion market cap, and it never got listed on centralized exchanges for obvious reasons. And then you have a 3 or 4 million market cap, meme token that gets listed and delisted, within 48 hours. So I think that's kind of like, it speaks to a broader sense of what the retail users are looking for. And DeFi should not be always a playground, right? People need to take it seriously. It's not just a place where you come in and make quick money and write off. So I think it's a learning lesson for everyone again, unfortunately, but it's also an opportunity to kind of redirect people and help them understand the pros and cons of the ecosystem.
Wow, well said. Yep, we all have our own learning journey. We're really close to the top of the hour, so before Tycho and Andre take off, let me throw it to you guys for any outros, any final words, and make sure that we are directing everyone to your platforms as well. Tycho?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, it was a pleasure to talk, and it's nice to sort of have these, have the camera setting as well, and be able to see everyone, because you're here on these spaces, and it's just kind of like, like who's behind the, sometimes you don't even see who's speaking or something. So no, it's great, but yeah, I think I'd like to sort of hook on to what Dylan said there very briefly, is that yeah, like crypto is serious, right? I mean, obviously there's a lot of fun stuff that happens in a fast moving space, but we're building the foundations for the future of finance, right? And that's what Bitcoin is. That's what Stacks is doing, and that's what all of us here are doing. And yeah, so it's also not like something for a quick buck, right? It's deploying some BTC and understanding how all these products work, and borrowing against it, engaging in the ecosystem, and yeah, and being patient, right? I think we've all been here for a very long time already, many of us, and I think when things really take off, and the world starts really understanding the power of Stacks, it will look like an overnight success, right? But for users and builders and no one, anyone like that, they will know that overnight successes are not, they're usually not made overnight, but in many years and months. So yeah, so go try it out. Put some SBTC on Stacks, put it on Zest protocol, earn that 7.3%. But yeah, do it with a clear mind, and do it with a long-term time horizon.
Perfect. How long do you think it's going to take for us to get the next cap to 3,000?
Yeah, I think that's a question for Andre.
Perfect segue. Thanks, Tycho. Yeah, Sean, this has been a pleasure. Thanks again for having me on. I think, one of the things that stands out from this conversation is just the focus on having having a more mission-driven focus and clear principles that guide you. I think that can really help during the volatility of days like today. And I think when building SBDC, our sort of North Star is to be the most secure or trust minimized way to use Bitcoin and DeFi. And so we really want to support a wide range of use cases and innovation around Bitcoin, and with sort of SBDC being the platform and the tool to kind of make that possible. And so, I think this is it's again, this is it's been a great chat, and I think going through some of these use cases for how we can enable that in terms of whether it's earning yields or borrowing against it or adding liquidity on protocols like Bitflow. I think there's a lot of new opportunities to use Bitcoin that I'm really excited about. And so if folks want to get involved, they want to play around with some of the stuff, and then some SBDC, you can go to app.stacks.co, and then head over to bitcoinismore.org to enroll in the rewards program, and you'll see a whole list of DeFi applications where you can take the next step and deploy Bitcoin in DeFi and various other use cases there. So yeah, maybe I'll drop here, but yeah, thanks again, everyone, and good chatting.
Thanks so much, Andre. All right, Diego and Jakob, I know we're about to get Grant up here to talk about the recent resurgence in the Stacks marketing efforts, but let me just give you the floor to add anything else that you'd like to the conversation. Mark as well.
I'll jump in on the meme coin side. I think that from my perspective, I'm a big subscriber to the financial nihilism kind of worldview. I think that there is a lot of folks around the world that have been left out from capital appreciation and are seeing their wealth being eroded with inflation. And those folks, they, as much as they maybe would care about Bitcoin, they can't, because if you have $200, why does it matter if you hold Bitcoin that goes up 2x or even 3-4x over the next 4 years? You need that 100x, you need that 1000x to put yourself into a position where you can actually, have your head above water financially. So I think it's really, like, we shouldn't laugh at it or dismiss it. I think it's a very important movement, and it is a symptom of a failing monetary system and to some degree failing economies around the world, and it's actually very sad. And what we need to build is, I think we need to embrace that movement, and I think folks at Bitflow, they're doing a great job doing that. I think that those folks, they need financial products that can give you that asymmetric upside, and they're chasing that in meme coins. Most of it doesn't work, and it's like gambling in a casino, and most people lose all their money. But there is something there that allows us to harvest that energy, if you want, that energy to do something to financially, and bring that into Bitcoin, bring that into DeFi, and then funnel them, basically onboard them that way into financial products that can actually build wealth sustainably over the long time, even if it takes decades. And that's, I think, what we're building towards. But I'm a big fan of meme coins. I trade meme coins myself for fun. I think it needs to be understood because it's not going to go away.
Beautiful. Well, something that you just spoke to was something that everyone kind of uncovers at their own rate through their Bitcoin journey. When they first learn about Bitcoin, they think like, oh, it has whatever, like the value in the US dollar, right? And they just think like it's something worth an amount. But then if they do more research, they figure out that there's Bitcoin, the asset, and Bitcoin, the network, right? The most robust decentralized network that then you can build on. So it's amazing to hear you articulate always the use cases beyond just savings technology, what it means to be a decentralized network. Is there anything you want to add on to not just Bitcoin, the savings technology, but Bitcoin, the network?
Yeah, I think that Bitcoin, the network, is super powerful and very much underappreciated. I think the folks that trade meme coins, to be quite honest, couldn't care less about Bitcoin, the network. They just want to have a little bit more money. I think Bitcoin, the network, is so powerful because it can actually create financial instruments and financial products and a financial system ultimately that is completely untethered from the powers that be, that can actually produce sustainable freedom for the next hundreds of years. And that's what I think we builders are excited about. And I think we need to drive that forward. And there's folks that understand that on the content creation side, and like folks that have a microphone and a platform, and they can they can advertise that, but at the end of the day, the end consumer, I think, especially on the mass market, doesn't care and will never care. And so it is a fight to actually build the best user experience and the best products on that platform, which is quite challenging, as we all know, as Bitcoin builders, because it is, even for a reason, it being so decentralized and so robust, it is very difficult to actually build good user experiences on. And threading that needle is what we're all doing, right? Like folks like, especially Mark, you with your wallet and all the things that you're doing on the UI UX side. If we can get that right, we can actually build the best product on the best foundation. And if we can do that, then we can actually bring those freedom assertions to more people. And I think that is very powerful in the next decades. But to expect folks to understand that Bitcoin, the network, is better than Solana, I think is a losing proposition and will not work.
Okay, good perspective. Well, let me throw it next to Grant. Jakob, Diego, Mark, I don't know if you have to leave right now, but obviously open invitation to please stick around and add to the conversation to talk about the new marketing efforts and the growing Stacks, enthusiasm around Stacks. So Grant, let me throw it to you because you have been central to this Stacks marketing working group. So yeah, I'll throw it to you so you can introduce yourself and talk about the change and the like renewed enthusiasm around Stacks and marketing.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on, Sean. So I'm Grant. I support the Stacks Foundation, kind of a generalist, helping with a lot of things, but focused on growth and supporting the app's ecosystem. So yeah, the marketing working group has picked up some momentum in the past few weeks. It started really with Diego dropping a message in the unofficial Stacks Telegram, just a kind of call out of bringing people together to have a more uh, cohesive marketing narrative for the ecosystem. And that really kicked off the working group. Diego kind of shared the desire to have a weekly call where we talk about different marketing strategies, align ourselves between all the different weaving narratives. So that was the start, and it's been a good success so far. It's been a lot of fun. We've been meeting every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Open invite for anyone listening to join. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I think I'll stop there and see if you have anything else.
Yeah, Diego, let me give you a chance to chime in about this because you've been around Stacks since, well, your first project was Stacks Packs. And you talk about utility. This was an NFT. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this was an NFT that had utility, and it was providing backpacks for kids in in Florida, right? In one of the school districts.
Yeah, I mean, we had big dreams for City Packs, but
Yeah.
we did provide funding to a nonprofit foundation that was helping um, public school kids in Miami-Dade County, which is the third largest school district in the country. And back then, we, myself, I grew up in South Florida. I noticed that a lot of the curriculum hadn't changed in 20 years since I graduated high school, right? And it was still the same. And blockchain was, the place to be. And I said, how can I help my local community? Miami is becoming this sort of Bitcoin crypto hub, but I'm not seeing, the dripping down to the community. How the community know more? I think it was a combination of like an educational campaign. We actually started building a virtual currency platform back then to launch a pilot program in a few the Miami-Dade schools to teach kids about cryptocurrency. It's still a passion and still a mission that I have while running Bitflow. Like, how can we help, pass the knowledge? But yeah, it was actually the first NFT that was minted with city coins and stacks, and about 90% of, I mean, more than 90% of the revenue went directly to the school. We donated about 20,000 stacks to this day. But yeah, it was that hype. I think what Miami and Bitcoin community built, and Stacks was able to leverage that very well. And I think with the marketing group, that's what we're looking for. Like, what's the next big narrative? What's the next big story that people will rally behind for the next 2 or 3 years, the same way that we did for SBTC or Nakamoto, and that's how things kicked off.
Amazing. Okay, so one of the challenges in the Stacks ecosystem is that it is a decentralized ecosystem. Yes, we have Stacks Foundation, but as far as like when you compare it to a lot of the other ecosystems and L1s and L2s that have like a really robust marketing budget, that doesn't really exist in a similar form on in Stacks. So out of this need grew this marketing endeavor, this working group. What are you excited about right now? What do you think needs to happen? What is being addressed now? And what do you think it's important for people to know about Stacks, and how can we, back to the conversation that we started with Andre, was how do we drive adoption of Stacks?
Yeah, I agree that it makes for a difficult challenge being a decentralized ecosystem where we have a lot of different stakeholders to address. So I think the marketing working group was an effort to bring that together and try to come up with at least some direction of a cohesive narrative. So in the marketing working group, we have different initiatives that we kind of come back to every week and give status updates and understand how they're going. And one of these initiatives is a narrative alignment. And basically what this is, we kind of created an open forum where anyone in the ecosystem can share some important points about the narrative. So these are just basic marketing points of narrative construction, who the ideal customer is, in quotes, what the problem they have is, why Stacks is positioned to solve it. So this is one area where we're coming in this chat, coming on the weekly calls, discussing this narrative. Some things that have landed so far is focusing on SBTC as really the core like driving point that Stacks is putting its efforts behind. And you see this a lot with Diego and Bitflow, where they're really driving people towards the benefits of SBTC. But yeah, that's been a big point. We've also had this other narrative of Bitcoiners want to earn more Bitcoin, and Stacks is the best place to do this. So we've found some traction in that. But another just quick point on the marketing working group, we really try to be data driven. So we have some Lunar Crush metrics that we're tracking, and we really want to find what is moving these metrics forward and driving some real data-driven approach on this marketing effort. But yeah.
Okay, so last question. Anything else that the users and passionate members of the community need to be aware of, or are there like some best practices? How can every individual support this ecosystem? That I know there are a lot of really passionate people who have been here for a long time, and they want to help it win. So to your point about gathering metrics and tracking what works well, what's the best bang for our buck? What can we be doing?
Yeah, good question. Best bang for your buck. I think being loud on social media always helps. So there's a lot of different ways to go in this direction, but really just pushing forward the narrative that we're putting in place with the Stacks working group, continuing to uplift those, whether it be like apps accounts or the official Stacks accounts, kind of uplifting those, giving those more attention is important. We had another initiative during the marketing working group, for example, about the SBTC cap, which was raised today. And so through this initiative, we told people that we need to make this known throughout the crypto ecosystem that this cap is happening. And there was a ton of grassroots support around this, around uplifting that message. So those are kind of easy examples of uplifting the narrative that Stacks account is pushing, or the Bitflow account is pushing, or different ecosystem accounts are talking about.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I think I think we're at a really good place to end it. Mark, Diego, is there anything else we should add to the conversation?
Yep, I'll take it. I appreciate the invite. I think this is awesome. Just adding on to what Grant said, I think if we look a year ago, all these working groups started about a year and a half ago. So collab is key. Co-marketing, working with different protocols, the same way we do work with Leather, and Stacking DAO and Zest, to build not only great products but also to build and support this narrative and educate more people. So this collaboration is key. I think we're on the right path. Like Grant has mentioned, there's basically three different audiences here. You got to attract builders, retail users, community, and then also investors. And sometimes we get 2 out of 3 right, and sometimes 1 out of 2 right. So it's a balancing act. It's like managing a home in a decentralized finance. I think this is a new type of business for everyone, especially in the DeFi ecosystem. We're trying to do our best to be fully decentralized. It's a road to full decentralization, and part of that you have growing pains. And I think what everyone is doing is great. And I think just communicating, being in contact with fellow builders, and helping out. I think it's a big deal. So it's a way to move forward. On the Bitflow side, little plug here, but check out bitflow.finance. We created a really cool SBTC landing page. Helps you redirect you to the minting SBTC. Maybe if you don't have the minimum cap, you can swap for SBTC as well. And then you have different earning opportunities. But if you have SBTC, you can pull in Bitflow. You can earn Bitcoin on Bitcoin, Bitcoin in, Bitcoin out. I think that's the key message. No need for other tokens. We have single-sided liquidity pools as well. You can earn anywhere from 12 to 50% APY. And we're here to help. DMs are open. We just launched a new support channel as well. And we hope to, onboard millions of users this year. So appreciate the space.
Awesome. Thank you, Diego. Mark, send us out.
Yeah, I was going to share a thought earlier that I'll just share now around this question around, I guess you prompted the group around how do we view meme coins and Solana and all the attention over there. We got to do a bit of a discussion around that. I mean, from my perspective, I think Stacks is operating in a very interesting middle area between the two sort of classic poles that we see in crypto. You've got Bitcoin on one end, which is of course the original and the most conservative side. People don't even call that crypto, right? It's Bitcoin. Then you've got kind of traditional crypto on the very other side. So you have sort of that's very not conservative. So you've got the really conservative, you've got the really casino sides of crypto. And in some ways, some key ways, I think Stacks we're trying to chart this middle path. I think other L2s on Bitcoin are also trying to do this, but Stacks being, I think, one of maybe the 2 longest standing projects in this sense, is really trying to find a way to sort of marry those two sides and say, look, there's value on both sides of those of the equation in the crypto industry. There's the security promises and the longevity of what we see in Bitcoin. There's also the functionality that we see on the other side. And I think we're trying to figure out what the synthesis looks like, but that middle way or that middle community, I think, is still nascent and I think less loud than other poles, if you will, sort of the extremes. But I'm hopeful that we're going to see it emerge as the most dominant actually part of crypto over time. So I don't think it's a matter of trying to be like those extremes and be just like the casino or just like the conservative sort of backsies. But it's being true of the fact that we want to make sense of the principles that we find on both sides and create a system that is long-term secure but also usable for everyone.
Great. Well, now I have to go look up the Peanut Butter Manifesto. I like that. Guys, what an amazing conversation. Wow. So everyone listening, please, if you're not doing so already, make sure you're following all of our guests and check out all the platforms that are innovating on Bitcoin via SBTC. So Bitflow, Hermetica, Zest, Stacking DAO, Velar, Alex, Granite. There's even more. So check out all the resources on that. Once again, big thanks to everyone joining today. Andre, Jakob, Mark, Diego, Tycho, Grant, and Kate for joining us today. You can always listen to previous shows on YouTube. or at your preferred podcasting platform, and also follow us on X, LeatherBTC. We've got some great shows lined up, including Jason Meyer, author of A Progressive's Case for Bitcoin, coming up. That's on March 11th. And Kate and I will be joining Brandon, as we always do every Friday, for Good for Bitcoin. And I'll be back again next Tuesday, as always, at 11 a.m. Eastern for the next Leather Lounge. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Bye.
You guys.
Thanks again for joining us in the Leather Lounge. We record each episode live every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And if you'd like to listen in or join us on stage, make sure to give us a follow on X at LeatherBTC. Leather is your gateway to everything Bitcoin, from DeFi to stacks, ordinals, runes, stamps, NFTs, and more. You can find loads of helpful crypto content on our YouTube channel and visit our blog and learn center at leather.io.